Head over to miniaturemarket.com where they have thousands of board games at discounted prices like Return to Dark Tower. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. You're about to see my Allegro 1-minute overview and final thoughts. This is designed to see if this game warrants more of your time. If it does, just keep watching because then you'll see my full intro overview and final thoughts. However, if you don't want to be spoiled anything and you want to skip right to the full review, use the time index below in YouTube. Return to Dark Tower is a 1 to 4 player cooperative game with a competitive variant where you'll be a unique hero like a spy master that has special abilities. And you'll be trying to complete one of many different scenarios, and each scenario can have all sorts of different foes and final adversary bosses for huge replayability. You'll be moving around and trying to cleanse different buildings of skulls because that's one of the ways to lose if too many come out. You'll also be finding foes on the map and then battling them in the app using different advantages that you have from different abilities throughout the game to make it easier to defeat them. You'll also be finding different quests throughout the game and doing certain things there and getting different rewards. Like you might get a smuggler's coin helping you with the Bezier. There's also plenty of treasures to get, and some of these have to do with some of the quests that you're trying to complete. You'll also be getting gear to help you as well. But you have to watch out because the tower's always fighting back, sometimes pushing skulls out into the board. Or maybe showing you glowing glyphs from the tower, making it harder for you to do certain actions. You also have to watch out for your corruption too, because if you get too many of them, that's one way to make everybody lose. So let's see if you have what it takes to complete your specific scenario, which is different every time you play. Return to Dark Tower's amazing production and engineering. It won my Innovative Game of the Year. The art's amazing, graphic design's awesome. It's a complex game, but it's very streamlined. It flows very well and still feels epic while being streamlined. Asymmetrical characters with cool special abilities. Many different stories, foes, adversaries give you tons of replayability. The app integration is awesome. It does great things that you could never do with physical cards. The battle system is awesome, using advantages, press your luck, things like that. Using potions and treasures and gears and corruptions, oh my. It all works together well, pushing and pulling the tough things for you to work together. The tower doing all cool things with glowing glyphs and opening up and spitting skeletons out. It's awesome. It does have a competitive version if you really want one, even though co-op's the main game. But on the negative side of things, some won't think it's even the same game, which it really isn't, but that's okay because it's so much better. Some don't like electronics or apps with physical games. This has that, but it does a really good job with it. And it's gonna be probably too complex for a nostalgic buyer that hasn't played a game since the 80s. And it doesn't completely remove the alpha gamer where they can tell players what to do, but this game is fantastic. I'm gonna be talking about this for a long time. It got a Saxophone Serenade, it's in my gaming library. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Back in the early 80s, Dark Tower, the board game, came out. I was a kid then, but I got it. My brothers and I, we played it a ton. We're still trying to figure out what happened to it because we're not really sure. But right now, Return to Dark Tower by Restoration Games is just starting to fulfill in from Kickstarter. So I'm gonna give you a quick overview of how the game works and let you know what I think about the new Return to Dark Tower. Now let me show you the package of the game here. Here's the top of the box. When I lift that up, this cool little insert was actually in the back of the box. Once you unwrapped it, I just placed it here. But under that fits the board, then the trays with the tops on them. There's the right tray without the top. Now below that tray to the right are more components. And then if you take the top off of that, you can get to everything else. Now at the beginning of the game, each player gets to pick a hero, like maybe you're the Spy Master, or the Relic Hunter, or the Orphaned Scion, or the Brutal Warlord. And each of those heroes are represented by these beautiful washed minis. And they thought of everything with this tower, like when you turn it on, it does the original sounds of the Dark Tower. That's awesome. Now you must download the free app that's integrated with the game to play, but it's so cool because even right here at the beginning, you get to select of one of 9 different main goals that you're going to be going for, which each of these really change the game about what you're trying to do and how you're going to get closer to winning the game Lots of replayability here because these all play a little bit differently and you're going to have different goals depending on it. And even once you select one, you're going to be selecting an adversary, which is going to be the main boss. And there's tons of these ones that you can select from as well. All different ones will be having different effects and different things that will happen. And you might even hear the tower in the background there. The actual tower makes noises in addition to the background music from the app. It's really cool how this is really integrated well. And you'll even be selecting different levels of foes, like levels 2s, 3s, and 4s, and you can select these, or you can have it randomize it, and you go through the different levels. So every game you can really customize to what you want the game to be like, or again, just randomize it if you want. Now, as you can see, the board is seated with skulls. And if ever you need to get a skull from the supply and you can't, that's one of the ways that everyone loses. Now, in this game, one of the things we're trying to do is get 4 treasures that have Ascol written on them, because that's going to allow us to be able to get to the Dark Tower and draw out the adversary to try to beat it in the end. Now, the flow of the game is actually pretty simple, that at the beginning of your turn, you can do a special ability that only your person can do, but then you're going to possibly move, and then you can do some heroic actions like removing skulls by cleansing them, or battling different enemies or foes, or doing different quests. Now, you only be able to do one of these per turn. You'll also be going to different buildings and possibly doing the actions of those as well. For example, my banner move is I can move anywhere in the same kingdom. Each of the kingdoms, north, south, east, and west, are in the game, and whatever one you're sitting at is the one that you're in. So I could move to anywhere, and I could do something like cleansing. I could take all of these skulls from this sanctuary and clean it, cleanse it, put it back in the supply, because again, if you run out of skulls in the supply, it's one way to lose the game. And after doing one of those heroic actions, you get to gain 2 spirit, which is sort of a form of currency in the game. Everyone also starts with some warriors, which will help you out in battle. And depending on which building you're at, again, you might reinforce in addition to your other actions and be able to do different things. Like in the sanctuary, we can just for free gain another spirit. Or if you're in the village, you'll be gaining warriors. Or if you're in the bazaar, getting different gear that will help you out. Or potions in the citadel. But there's also more powerful ways to reinforce at different spots by spending a certain amount of spirit to get a more powerful action there. And at the end of your turn, you're going to throw in one of these skulls into the tower. And different things are going to happen at different times depending on everything else that's going on in the game that's tracked with the tower, because it's so smart. For example, sometimes events happen like a seal's broken and something is about to light up in the tower. Now, normally you don't turn this, but I'm going to turn it just to show you what this looks like. As we see that this one right here is flashing. This is telling us that this would have to get removed, which is interesting because these will show different icons that have to do with some of the different actions. And if one of these is facing you, to do that action, you have to spend a spirit. It gets harder. But sometimes this thing's going to spin, opening up holes, allowing more ways for skeletons to come out on the board, because it's going to make it a lot harder for you to win. Now, that was doing cleansing. Sometimes you'll be doing quests. Like, for example, this is marking a companion quest, and if we go there and do that, that specific quest is run by the app, and it says, hey, if we spend 4 spirit, we can get the smuggler's coin. So you'll be able to get that quest item if you're able to do that, the smuggler's coin, which gives you different abilities and all sorts of different quest items. And the quests are changing throughout the game. Sometimes if you don't get there fast enough, a new one that will move, and it'll be something else that you need to do. And other times, one of those heroic actions you could do is to battle. And if you're in a spot with one of the enemies or their foes, you can battle them. And this is run through the app. And so here we'll click battle. And we'll be able to say, hey, who are we battling right now? Here's the foes that we picked for this game. And it'll actually tell us who we're battling there. We pick it. And then we're going to select a certain amount of cards depending on this. It's a level 2. So it's going to tell you what to do here. So it's sort of like a randomized deck that the app handles for you. And it says, hey, lose 5 warriors. Now, if you don't have 5 warriors, you'll get some corruption, which we'll show you later. It's one of the ways to possibly lose. But the brigands, they have humanoid and stealth there. So if you have some advantages that you can use, you can actually tap the app. And now we went from lose 5 warriors to lose 3 warriors. We might hit it again. Hey, now something good. We gain a potion. So you're going to be trying to mitigate what you're doing, and sometimes you'll need to lose things, sometimes you need to gain things using different advantages. And at the end, you'll be able to remove the token. Now to clarify a few things, so for example, this is who we were fighting, and their keywords are stealth and humanoid. Actually, on the back of these cards, it tells you like what they do to you, what bad things they do to you. But because it has those two keywords, we have a stealth advantage by default. We also have a humanoid advantage from, let's say we had this treasure from earlier, right? So now we actually have these two advantages that we could have used as I was showing you before, and you got to decide a little bit of press your luck. You don't know what cards are coming, you know what resources you have, what you have to give up. If you're never able to give up something that it tells you to, you have to give up all you can, and then you gain a corruption. These corruptions will slow you down throughout the game, or hurt you in some way. If you end your turn in your home kingdom, you lose a spirit. If you ever get a second corruption, it's even worse, but if you get a third corruption, well, that's one way to lose the game if anyone does that. But there's ways to get rid of corruption, like if you go to a sanctuary and you reinforce and you spend 5 of your spirit, you can remove all of your corruptions. Some of the buildings allow you to gain gear. These 6 gears are out every game, and you're able to get different things to help you with stealth advantage or magic or preventing losing certain things in battle and things like that. And of course, you'll be gaining all sorts of different treasures, which will give you different abilities and advantages as well. And if you're at the Citadel, you can spend 5 spirit to gain a virtue. You start with some on your board, and they're different for each player. And then once you do that, you can flip this over, and now this is a good thing for you. So at the end of each month, which essentially is a round, you gain 15 warriors. Actually, in this specific scenario, we're trying to get 5 of these flipped over, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 more, and have 4 treasures with this keyword on it to be able to go do that final quest to draw out the adversary to try to beat it and win. Now, another aspect of losing is if you go past the 6th month, essentially the 6th round, you get more and more actions each round, but there is a little bit of a timer clock too. And sometimes in between turns, the tower stirs and it will rotate. Watch the bottom there. Whoop, out came a skull. Now this is where it came to. Whatever kingdom it actually came out on, regardless of where it rolled, you have to place this on one of your buildings, and this is bad because they only hold 3 skulls. If you ever need to put a 4th somewhere, that building is destroyed. And you don't want that to happen because this player would gain a corruption of whoever's home kingdom that is. But you're not necessarily always trying to spread them around too, because if this player comes here and decleanse, he gets rid of all 3 of these and puts them in the supply, where if they're spread out, well, it's a little harder to get them back in the supply. Again, that's one way to lose, is to run out of the supply. So there's some different strategies here on how to manage the skulls as they come out. And sometimes different dungeons may spawn in different aspects of the game, and you'll need to go dungeon diving, going through different rooms and trying to find either people or trying to find different artifacts or trying to find the hidden room and things like that. There's all sorts of different things you can do when you try to get into a dungeon. And so when you go into a dungeon, you're going to start at an entrance, and you can be working your way around and try to find different things, and it will tell you what to do, like lose a spirit and 3 warriors, but you might find some good things in the dungeon as well. But you can also use advantages for there too, like and get no losses. Then you can decide to keep going or to stop, and you might just decide where to go and keep trying to go and find your way through the dungeon. And when you're fighting the final boss, the adversary, the cool thing is that when you go into battle with them, you're going to be selecting cards like normal, but when you go through these cards and you start to use some advantages, like this one says place 8 skulls on buildings in your current kingdom, but we could use advantages of magic or beast. If you start using these, let's say you get past this and you finish this card, well, next time anybody goes in to fight this adversary, it's going to remember where you left off on these cards. So you sort of like do more wounds here and there to that, and after you finish a card, you can retreat, for example, and it remembers where that was left off, and so it gets a little easier. You do blow after blow over a course of time, unlike other enemies. It's an interesting way to do a final boss fight. So in a general aspect, that's what you're doing. You're moving around, you're cleansing skulls, trying not to lose that way. You're trying to battle different foes, because if you don't, they overtake the board and you'll never have a chance to win. You're doing different quests that will give you different bonuses and trying to get the final quest done to get to the final battle and beat the adversary. But in the meantime, going to different buildings and using those actions to help you with resources, gathering different abilities of virtues, trying to get rid of your corruptions, getting treasures and things. And this is pretty much how the game is played, but it's played very differently with each scenario, with all the different adversaries and with all the different foes. Yeah, as I mentioned in the overview, we had this as kids, my brothers and I, and we played it a ton and we loved it as a kid. And we never knew really what happened to it. We think my parents probably dropped it off to like Goodwill when they moved out to Arizona from Boston. And we were talking about that today, actually. And so I have a nostalgic tie to this game, which might, change the lens that I look through things, but I loved the original. And who better to do this than Restoration Games, who is known for this is all they do is they bring back older games, they redevelop them, they actually make them good games. Because I went back and played the original Dark Tower on just an online app type of thing. It's pretty awful. But back then it was just so cool with the technology. So now you've got great technology and you've got great game designers and developers and publishers putting this thing together. Oh man, this is great. The first thing I love about this is the production and engineering is just off the charts. If you've looked at some of the diagrams and some of the technology that's gone into that tower, oh my gosh, there is so many moving parts and things in this thing to make it work. It is so innovative the way that this tower works that this was my innovative game of the year for 2021 because of what the tower does. The things that it's tracking, it knows certain things, it does certain things based upon what's happened before, what's coming up. It's just, this thing is so advanced. It might be the most advanced piece of any board game in the history of Earth. So the production is amazing in this game. Now, in addition to that, everything else from a production standpoint is awesome. The art is just gorgeous. The graphic design, it just looks nice and clean. Now let's start getting into gameplay here. This game was partially developed by Isaac Childress, who has done Gloomhaven, the biggest Kickstarter board game dungeon diver ever. But they kept this pretty streamlined. Now it's only pretty much a few things you're doing on your turn. Really, you maybe take a special ability banner thing, but then you're moving, and then you're possibly doing one of the heroic things, whether you're cleansing, whether you're going on a quest, or whether you're battling. And then you could possibly do some reinforcements, at one of the buildings, a good one, a normal one or an enhanced one. And I like that they give you the flexibility to do those in any order and move here, then do this. And, it's very flexible. It's very streamlined. It's not clunky. It just flows well. But at the same time, it still feels like a pretty big and epic game, even though the mechanisms are streamlined. It doesn't bog itself down, which I really like. The characters' virtues are really cool because each of them are different. You start with some on your board, but then you have other ones that you can unlock, and it just makes your character feel different. And depending on what you're doing and what scenario you're doing, some of them you might want to unlock in different, orders and things like that. So I like that, you have sort of an asymmetry there. And speaking of that, you have all the different sort of scenarios that I showed you in the app, all of the different foes, all the different adversaries. This game, even if you were going to play the same one over, just because of the different foes and adversaries, is going to give you a lot of replayability. But then when you put all the different the different scenarios there, you have all these permutations, there's a ton of replayability built into this. Now the app integration in this is absolutely awesome. Just though it doesn't get in the way. It doesn't feel like I'm going back and forth. And so the way it works is, and it does a really good thing, is it takes the battle deck, which could have been a deck of cards, and is allowing you to spend sort of advantages without you knowing what that's going to be. And you don't know how many to use, and it's a little bit of a pressure of luck, which I love. And the app sort of hides that aspect, sort of like a video game would. So this is an app done right, where it actually hides some of the things in the background, but makes it so it's a lot easier to do, a lot easier to change, and maybe possibly rebalance in the future or add more cards. Things that you couldn't do with physical cards, where, keeping some secret information, things like that. The way it works in the app and the intelligence is amazing. The way that the app has sounds and things going on, and then when certain things trigger, the tower's making noises. It's just the way that they're integrated. They really knocked this part of it out of the park for sure. And speaking of those battles, I'm not a person that likes a lot of big battle and combat games, but I gotta say this one is so streamlined. You pick some random cards in the app, and it's telling you what you gotta lose. And you might lose a little less if you use the right types of advantages. So you're trying to go, hey, you know what? I'm good in the mountains. I might not wanna fight in those plains. I might wanna go over there in the mountains because I get an advantage. Oh, this specific foe that I'm fighting, well, they have this keyword and I have some things for that. So I'm gonna go over here. So you can kind of mitigate things. But I like that it's just like, okay, I'm gonna lose this type of stuff, or I'm gonna use some advantages. And if I lose something and I can't lose it, I'm going to get a corruption, which brings me to the next thing. The corruption is just a cool thing in this because you're getting it. It's hampering you. You get a second one, it's hampering you even more. You get a third, you lose. But there's ways to get rid of it. You can go and do an enhanced action to spend 5 spirit to get rid of all your corruption. It's one of the things that you're towing to try not to lose cooperatively together. Added to that, all the different potions, those little advantages that you can spend one time and get. The treasures that are giving you, like, always you're getting some advantages, but there's certain treasures that are going to mean more to you in certain scenarios. You've got different gear that's kind of the same every game, but that's sort of a staple of things that you can use. And then when the tower does some cool things, like the glyphs. Ooh, the tower's glowing. You open it up. Oh man, I can't take my banner action without spending a spirit to do so. It makes things harder, and I love that. And then sometimes the tower's gonna spin. Out come skeletons. Oh, you know what? Well, that glyph isn't hurting me anymore. But darn it, a stupid skeleton came out. I gotta figure out where to put it. I love even the strategy of that. What do you do with these skeletons? Do you put them all together on one thing? Usually it's best because you go and you cleanse it, and you can cleanse them all at once. Whereas opposed to spreading them all out, then you spread too thin. It's harder to cleanse them all at once. Plus, things do bad things to you when you're like next to a place that has skeletons. So there's even strategies of where to place those. This game is just really, really cool. I played it once a couple years ago at PAX Unplugged, and I was really impressed with it then. And in fact, the game, from a general standpoint, hasn't actually changed that much, but the app is so much better, and obviously this is full production and stuff. This game is really cool, and it's going to be one that's going to be talked about for a long, long time, I think. Also, I know that there were a lot of people that were upset that this was a cooperative game and not a competitive game, but I mentioned there is a competitive version. Essentially, there's some setup differences, there's a little bit of rules differences, but you're trying to do 3 tests first, get to the Dark Tower, get to the dungeon there, and then find the hidden relic, okay? So you can play it competitive if you want to, but the main way to play is cooperative. So let me set some expectations here. Here's some things that could be negatives for you for this game. Number one, you've got to go into it knowing, sort of having certain expectations. Like, for example, you can't think this is going to be Dark Tower just newer, because it's not. If you think you're going to play the old game, which if you go back and play the old game, you probably won't want to do that. But you might be buying this game or thinking about buying it because you have this nostalgic tie to it. Allow the tie to kind of get you there, but don't expect the same game because it's very different. So some won't even think it's the same game, and it's not. But that might make some people upset. Just know that going in that this is not going to feel a whole lot like, other than having the tower there. But believe me, it's a million times better from a game perspective. Also, some people don't like electronics and apps with physical board games. They have drawn a line and they don't like it. If an app makes a game better and does certain things, like I just mentioned with the battle system, that actually is better on an app than it would be in physical cards, I like it. Plus you add in the different sounds and the aura and the things that play in the background, I think it just adds a lot. I'm not against it. I think it does a great job. Also on the negative, if you've only played the original 1980s version and you just get this, and you haven't played any modern board games since then, this game's probably going to be a little bit too complex for you, because this is a gamer enthusiast game. There's a decent amount going on. It's 90 minutes to 2 hours long. It might be too complex for a nostalgic sort of buyer. Also, it doesn't completely remove what's known as the alpha gamer possibility, where one player tells everyone what to do, because everything's open. You can actually even trade things if you're on the same spot as other players. Now, it is the person's decision whose turn it is, but you still could have people trying to tell people what to do. If you don't like that, or you tend to do that too much and you don't like that in games, this doesn't totally get rid of that. It's still possible here. But with that being said, I think this is amazing. This has absolutely got a spot in my gaming library. So with that, it's going to be getting a Saxophone Serenade to induct it into my gaming library. This has been the Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relationships through board games by helping you on the next one you love. Game Toppers not only transforms your existing table to a high-quality gaming solution, they now offer full leg kits and dining cover solutions for the full table application. Paired with their amazing, thematic, premium stitch edge mats from noted board game artists like Vincent Dutray, collapsible cup holders, and really cool accessories, it's a complete system that upgrades every game you play. Go to GameToppersLLC.com or click the link below.